listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again today, just like any other day. We have another amazing show lineup for y'all. We have our special guest for today, Alicia Butler Pierre. She is the founder and CEO of Equilibria, Inc. And I just want to first say, your story is awesome. I read your bio. It's kind of lengthy, but we're going to get through this and learn about everything about your business and also about your personal story. So first and foremost, Alicia, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, Shamaya. It's the end of the week, much anticipated. And I'm really grateful to be here with you on your show today. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you taking time talking to us. Like I said in the introduction, you are the founder and CEO of Equilibria, Inc., and you specialize in designing scale-ready businesses, and you specialize in the infrastructure, and you can teach us all about that. But before you do, tell us a little bit about your life and how you got involved into being an entrepreneur.
Oh, wow. Let's see. So if I focus this answer specifically around how I came to be an entrepreneur, my very first entrepreneurial venture, Shamaya, started when I was just 7 years old. So I've always had this desire to make my own money because I learned very early on that there were certain things that my parents were not going to give me or do for me. And if I wanted it, I was going to have to make it happen myself. So I loved candy, and they were not going to always buy candy for me. And so literally my very first gig at 7 years old, I would do some light chores at a daycare, like things like sweeping the porch or, doing just very light duty things, not breaking any child labor laws. That was my first entrepreneurial venture. And I remember my dad actually opened a checking account for me right at 7 years old. And I had that account, believe it or not, until last year in 2022. The only reason I had to close it was because someone stole my identity. They were literally, they swiped a check that I had placed in the mail and just kind of went to town. But I had the account for all those years, 39 years to be exact at that point. And then by the time I got to high school, I did all kinds of things to make money. And it's funny because I went from doing light chores to make money so that I could buy candy to actually selling candy when I was in high school, because that was how I was able to pay for gasoline, to fuel a car so that I could drive myself to school when I was in high school. And then ultimately I did go on to college. I did graduate. I did work professionally, but I always had some type of a side venture going. At that time, when I was in my early 20s, I was kind of dabbling into real estate. So I had some real estate things going on. But then ultimately, when I decided that I needed to relocate, I was living in New Orleans, Louisiana. I relocated from New Orleans to Atlanta, Georgia, and I didn't find a job. I came here looking for a job, but I didn't find one, Shamaya. And what I did instead was redirect the time, effort, and energy that I was spending looking for a job, working for someone else, into creating my own opportunity. And that is how my company, Equilibria, literally started. This was back in 2005. And now here we are 18 years later, and I'm on the I Am Refocused podcast with you.
And I appreciate you being on again. When you kind of go back to high school, you were into writing as well. You wrote for the school paper. You also discovered your love for chemistry. Tell us a little bit about your experience with writing for the school and discovering a subject that you really appreciated.
I always liked writing. Always. I loved literature. And I really thought that I would become a journalist one day. That was one of my first career choices that I can remember vividly. And I started working on the school newspaper in high school, and I hated it. but not for the reasons that some people might be thinking. I like the idea of we were literally laying out articles, so that it could go to print, like physically cutting things and laying it out, typesetting it, the old school way, and then having it sent off to be printed. But what I did not like was what it took to make a quote unquote good story. And I saw that very early on. Even in high school, I saw that behavior taking place, and it turned me off. And around that time, I was in 11th grade when I took chemistry and discovered that I had a real aptitude in it. And it's a complete deviation from the arts and literature. This is science. And I loved it and I excelled in it. It came so natural to me. And by the time I was in my final year of high school, 12th grade, instead of going on to physics, I decided to take an advanced chemistry course. And my teacher strongly encouraged me that when I went on to college, that I not pursue a degree in chemistry, but rather chemical engineering. And that was one of the first, I would say, truly pivotal moments in my life. Was just, going from thinking I was going to be a writer or a journalist to, I might become a scientist or maybe even an engineer instead.
And when you entered LSU's chemical engineering program, at that point in your life, did you know with confidence what you wanted to do for your career? And if so, did you have any mentors or professors that you grew close to?
No, I did not know. I thought, that's such a great question. I've never been asked that, by the way. So I did not know. I can honestly tell you, I was going through the motions. I was literally being guided by what other people told me to do, starting with the decision to pursue chemical engineering in the first place. It wasn't as though that was my choice. I was going for chemistry, but it was a teacher who suggested chemical engineering. So once I was at LSU, the curriculum was structured such that it was really kind of a pipeline to working at an a refinery or some type of a chemical plant. I did not have an appreciation, and shame on them for not exposing us to this, but I didn't have an appreciation, Shemaya, for the fact that I could have worked in the food and beverage industry. I could have worked in pharmaceuticals. I could have even worked as, on Wall Street. A lot of engineers, people with engineering degrees, end up on Wall Street. And I don't know if your audience is familiar with Robert F. Smith, the Black billionaire, but he also has a degree in chemical engineering, didn't work at a plant. He went and eventually got his MBA and started working on Wall Street. So I didn't know that those different career options were available to me. And I know we're not supposed to live lives of regret, but I could kick myself. I'll go ahead and take the blame for this, for not educating myself further about what different career options existed for me as a chemical engineer when I was getting close to the time of graduating. So I wish I could tell you that I had everything laid out and that I had a plan, but honestly, I didn't. I just knew that once as I was approaching graduation, I needed to start interviewing, and whoever hired me and offered me the best deal, that's who I went with, sadly. I would never, ever approach something like that now. Things that I do are definitely a lot more thought out and planned and strategized. But back then I was doing whatever people told me they thought I should do, to be honest with you.
You're listening on Refocus Radio, talking to our guest today, Alicia Butler Pierre. And when you finished LSU, you got your first job. What was that experience like? And I understand from reading your bio that after that season, you end up working for a small family-owned engineering consulting firm and enrolling in an MBA program. So what was that journey like for that time period, having your first job, going to your second one, and going back to school?
I actually started going back to school when I was at my first job, which was a large corporation, very large, global company. And 9/11 happened. And it just so happened, Shamaya, that all the classes I was taking at that time required in-person participation. And I was stranded in Michigan at a conference when 9/11 happened. And to make a long story short, I just remember when I finally made my way back down to New Orleans, I had missed quite a bit of class. And so I actually just didn't continue. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, either this job goes or I forfeit my dream of becoming or of going back to business school. So I was working full time during the day, going to school at night. And what led to that decision, which I think is really critical to point out, was the fact that I recognized how ignorant I was about business. And it was business that was driving our day-to-day production schedules. So for example, we might be told to run equipment to produce what we were producing, at full throttle, operate at 100% today. And then tomorrow we might be told to cut back by 50%. And then the day after that, we might be told to shut down altogether. And then after that, you're running full throttle again. It just seemed erratic. I didn't understand the connection to changes in customer demand for our product, for the thing that we were producing. So I was just very ignorant about business. And that's what ultimately led to my decision to go back to business school. So again, going to school at night, working full time during the day, 9/11 happens. I sit out for the year. And I eventually meet the man that owned the engineering consulting firm that I ultimately went to work at. And the environment was different, literally like night and day. I went from this very large corporate siloed culture to one it was a small family owned consulting firm, engineering consulting firm. So there was no bureaucracy because it was a family-owned company. So the only way you were really going to rise to the top was if you were one of their family members. But I think that's important to point out because it was small, I had an opportunity to actually see the interconnectivity of business. In other words, I got to see the role that HR plays in making sure that the right people are hired. I understood the role that sales and marketing played in actually selling our services and marketing and promoting our services and doing the branding so that we could attract more clients. I obviously understood the operational component because that's where I worked, but also understanding the importance of IT. If we don't have the right technologies in place to do our work, that could be devastating. And then the financial and the accounting aspects of it as well. So it was the perfect environment for me to be in as I went back to school, business school, and this time I was able to see it through to completion, getting my MBA. So that was what that experience was like, and that's what led to my decision to go back to business school in the first place.
And later in 2005, you end up making another change. And 6 months later from that change, you face what a lot of people in the area, Hurricane Katrina happened. Tell us a little bit about that period.
I was around the time that I was getting close to finishing up my MBA. There was a really bad tropical storm. So this was around late August, early September of 2004 that passed through New Orleans. And if any of your listeners have never been to New Orleans, it truly is a bowl. It sits, as most people know by this point, it's well below sea level. And when it rains, just a regular rain, I mean, the city floods so easily. But I remember being stuck in my house. There was a tropical storm passing through, and I was really scared because the water was, let me tell you, once water has covered a street and it has nowhere else to go, it only goes up and it rises very quickly. But I really thought I was going to die. I lived alone. At that point, you can't call for help because you're stuck. You're stuck where you are. But thankfully, it eventually, it stopped raining, the waters receded, and everything was fine. But I just remembered Shemaiah thinking, I can't do this anymore. I have to get out of here. So that led to me relocating to Atlanta, where I only knew one person at the time. I just saw Atlanta as this land of milk and honey that was going to be a far cry from what I was dealing with in New Orleans. And I relocated. First, I graduated with my MBA in December of 2004. I remember selling my home in New Orleans at the beginning of 2005. By February of 2005, I relocated to Atlanta. And as you mentioned, 6 months later, Hurricane Katrina happened. It was a lot of people, I remember during that time, contacted me saying, "Oh, I bet you're glad you got out of there just in time." But honestly, it was a very sickening feeling, knowing that so many of my friends and family were adversely impacted by that. So it's almost akin to survivor's guilt in a way, even though I was not physically there. I was actually in New Orleans the weekend before Katrina made landfall. So there was a bit of guilt that I felt that I had the ways and means to get out and the foresight to get out when so many others did not.
And later you decided that it was time for you to launch your own company. Mm-hmm. What pushed you to make that decision?
I couldn't find a job.
Yeah. That would do it.
I came here to Atlanta, again, looking for a job, Shemaiah, because compared to New Orleans, Atlanta, I saw Atlanta as this place where this thriving metropolis where there were so many companies that are headquartered here. So for example, for your listeners that may not be aware, Atlanta is home to Coca-Cola, Delta Airlines, UPS, Rubbermaid, Chick-fil-A. So companies like that. And I just saw all of the opportunity that was here that was not in the state that I had just left, the state of Louisiana, my home state, by the way. So I came here, and this was, again, 2005. This was right around the time when everything was starting to go digital in terms of job searching and job applications. And I remember what was a good 2 months of just getting on the computer every day, applying for different positions and hearing nothing oftentimes. And it was disheartening. And around that time, I started watching different documentaries, reading books, reading articles. And so many of those books, documentaries, and articles were centered around the fact that we're all blessed with natural skills, talents, and abilities. But through our process of quote unquote education, we're literally taught to not be entrepreneurs, but to go and work for someone else. And I started through a period of introspection, started thinking, well, what is it that I'm naturally good at? And it was organizing. And so, Shemaiah, I started Equilibria as a professional organizing company. So I was the lady going into people's homes and literally taking their certain rooms and having it go from a state of chaos to calm. But what I noticed was that most of my clients were entrepreneurs. They were home-based business owners. And it wasn't that they were chronically disorganized people. They certainly were not hoarders. They just needed processes and systems in place to make sure that things wouldn't, if things ever did get chaotic in their home offices, they at least had something that they could revert back to restore the peace and the calm. And that's honestly over the years how it shifted from professional organizing services to building business infrastructure. And I got away from working in people's home offices and into actual, brick and mortar type locations. So that's what happened. That's how I started my company. It was literally because I couldn't find a job. And so all those years growing up, always having a side hustle, it was like, okay, it's no longer going to be a side hustle that you're dabbling with. You're going to have to go at this full time.
Listen on Refocus Radio, talking to our guest today, Alicia Butler Pierre, the founder and CEO of Equilibria, Inc. Next question for you is, now that you have this business in place and you're helping your clients, helping small businesses, explain to the audience why business infrastructure is very important and what are some questions that it can answer.
Business infrastructure is important, Shamaya, because it literally provides a foundation upon which you can build, grow, and ultimately scale. I had a client many, many years ago who used an analogy, and I'm going to borrow that analogy because I thought it was so brilliant. He said, it's almost like building. Do you want to build your house on sand or do you want to build your house on concrete? Which is going to be more stable? That's what business infrastructure gives your company. So when your business has the benefit of more clients than you might be able to handle, or you have a really popular product, an amazing service that is garnering the attention of so many people, you ultimately are faced with a decision. That decision being, okay, I either significantly raise my prices so that I don't get as many people coming to me asking for this product or service. But more than likely, you realize that you have to hire more people. Well, in hiring more people, those people need to know what to do. They need to know how to do it. And they also need to know the structure. Because if there is no structure, people that you hire will leave very quickly. And if there is no structure, people that you hire will do things their own way. And that can upset your customers because your customers become accustomed to a certain type of quality that's associated with your products and services. And they become accustomed to it being delivered to them in a certain or particular way. That's what business infrastructure does for you, is it links your people, your processes, and all of your tools and technologies into a cohesive framework so that whenever there's a change in one of those areas, you immediately understand the impact that it has on the others. So no more silos. Everything, it truly speaks to what I mentioned earlier, which is the interconnectivity of everything that's going on in your business. It does answer 4 questions, and those 4 questions are, what is the work that has to be performed in your company in the first place? How is that work organized? How is it organized into departments? Number 3, who actually will do the work? As entrepreneurs, when we first start our businesses, we're doing the work of so many different types of people, but that's not sustainable. And especially as you start having growing demand for whatever it is you're selling or offering to the marketplace, you have to hire more people. So who are those people? Who are those people? What are the roles that need to be filled at your company? And then finally, the 4th question is, how is that work performed? And that's when you really get into identifying the processes and the procedures that you need to document so that you ensure consistency in the way that you are producing or delivering your goods and services.
When it comes to sales marketing operations, you have a statement that I read in my information, battle between the seen and the unseen. Explain what that means for the audience.
Sure. And I thank you so much for asking that. When we're in business, everybody understands what marketing is. We all understand that we have to promote and brand and need some form of publicity and even social media to get the word out about what we do and what we have to offer. There's no dispute about that. So think of marketing activities in your company as the things that you're doing to be seen. Because if you're not seen, nobody will know about you and you'll be out of business really quickly. Well, operations is equally as important, but unfortunately, Shemaya, it doesn't get the same type of love and attention as marketing related activities. But think of operations as the things that are going on behind closed doors that your customers never see, but they definitely experience. We all know when we've had a bad customer experience, and it's not necessarily because of something that we've seen them do. It could be things going on behind the scenes, and then we get that defective product that we've ordered in the mail, and we're like, well, what happened? Well, from an operations perspective, what happened in the process of producing that good that the customer ordered, that you ordered, that caused it to be defective in some way or another? So that's why I say marketing is the seen, the things that are seen. And then operations are the things that are unseen typically. And there is a battle because so many people devote so much of their time and attention and effort on marketing related activities to the detriment of the operations. And so I'm just making the argument that one is not more important than the other. They actually have a symbiotic relationship. You have to have both. So that's what I mean by that. It's oftentimes it's like the battle between the seen and the unseen.
And last question for you, as an entrepreneur and someone that is in charge of their business, their services, what they oversee, based on your journey from growing up, having the entrepreneur bug when you were a little kid, from going to school, going through LSU, from going all these different chapters in your life, getting through all these ups and downs, if you will. What's one thing that you kept with you that points you to your North Star?
Oh, great question. Gosh. I keep a picture of my maternal grandmother with me at all times. And she passed away back in 2006. And whenever I'm having a down day, or even if I'm having a great day, I will often look at her picture. I keep it in a little portfolio that I have with me that's always in my backpack. And I'll just look at her and I'll just wonder, is she proud of me? Have I just done something that would embarrass her? But I also think about the opportunities that have been afforded to me as a woman that, unfortunately, because of the time and era that she lived, she couldn't have done. So a lot of times when I find myself maybe complaining about something, or I'm just, not feeling great, or I'm kind of down and out, because it's tough being a business owner. It is. I will not sit up here and make it seem as though every day is a rosy day, because it isn't. But I often will look at her picture and it's just a reminder of, keep going. You can have a bad day, but pick yourself back up and keep going. She's my North Star.
Once again, been listening to Refocus Radio, talking to our guest today, Alicia Butler Pierre. You can go to her website. It's aliciabutlerpierre.com. And also for our listeners, do you have a website that they can visit for your business?
Absolutely. It's eqbsystems.com. So eqbsystems.com.
Once again, I want to say thank you to you, Alicia, for taking time talking to us today.
Thank you so much, Shemaya.